Hi, my friends. This is part 2 of The Lost Treasure of Lincoln County. We started it with part 1. This is part 2 of this book, The Lost Treasure of Lincoln County. I hope that if you don't have a copy of this book, that you've at least looked at it on Amazon.com, and perhaps if you like it and you're enjoying it, that you'll want to purchase it. I have some things that I want to show you before we start reading and before we review what we talked about yesterday. In the 1950s and early 1960s, things were different than they were right now. And I know that you realize that things change and things are different, but I want to show you some things from that era. So as we go into this next chapter, some of those things are going to be mentioned, and you will be able to visualize for yourself at that point in the reading about what we're talking about. So one of the things that we talked about in the next chapters is a guy by the name of Roy Rogers. Now, I don't know if you know who Roy Rogers is or not, but he was a very famous TV cowboy. And he was handsome, he was tall, he was good looking, and he was one of the guys that wore a white hat. And wearing a white hat means he was a good guy. And so Roy Rogers was on, this is a comic book that has Roy Rogers in it. And he also had a television show. He sang, he was good looking, he was just a really neat cowboy. And he was a hero for a lot of boys during that time. And boys at that time liked to play cowboys and Indians. And so a lot of the time when they would be a cowboy, who were they? They were Roy Rogers. Another thing that's mentioned in the next chapters are skates. Now, I know that you know what skates are now, and that you have seen skates at the skating rink, and you may have some at home, the inline skating and all that other stuff. Well, in the 50s and in the 60s, skates looked a whole lot different. This is what the skates looked like. They were heavy, they were metal, there were 4 wheels on them, there was a strap that went around the ankle, and then there were these grips on the end. And you would put your shoe in here, and then you would tighten these grips so that your shoe wouldn't come off the skate. Now, how would you tighten those grips? With a thing called a skate key. Now, skate keys were worn around the neck or around the ankle, usually just an old shoestring, some kind of something or other that you could put it around your neck and wear it, because you never knew when this skate was going to come off. And when it came off, you had to take your shoe off. And so to take your shoe off, you had to loosen these grips. Well, there's a bolt right here, and the end of this skate key would fit right on that bolt. And you would turn it and turn it and turn it, and it would loosen it up, or turn it the other way and it would tighten it. So you had to have your skate key. Now, this skate was adjustable, so as your foot grew, you could make the skate longer. So the other end of the skate key had this bigger place right here that would fit over this nut right here, and you would crank it, and then it would loosen it up, and you could fix it to fix your size. So this skate could fit lots of sizes, and we kept these skates, and we used them, and boys and girls at that time would skate up and down the street all day long. And kids would come tromping through the house with their skates on, and their moms would yell at them to get out of the house with those skates on, because they would make a lot of noise and they would tear up the floor. So, but if you were in a hurry and you had to get in the house quickly, you didn't worry about that. You just got in the house quickly. So this is skates from that time period. Now you know who Roy Rogers is, and so let's review what we talked about yesterday. We started our book, The Lost Treasure of Lincoln County. We began by reading the prologue. Remember that a prologue is at the beginning of the book, It gives you a little extra information about the story, and then you get right on into chapter 1. Chapter 1 introduced us to two characters. One is one of the main characters in the book named Jonas. Jonas had a dream, and he woke up from the dream kind of confused about why he had dreamed about what he had dreamt. And he went in and talked to his mother, asked her about a flag, and she said, yes, we have a flag like this one over my shoulder that's in a triangle case. And inside that flag case was a flag that had laid over the coffin of her father when he died in World War II. And so he learned the story about his grandfather, and they put the flag back into the case, and that was where we ended. So today we are going to start with chapter 2. If you have your book, I hope that you will open it, and let's get started reading chapter 2. All right, chapter 2 is called Summer Days. The rest of the day, Jonas was free to do whatever he wanted to do. He usually spent most of his time playing in the neighborhood with his friends. None of them had a lot of toys, but they had great imaginations. They could make just about anything out of a stick. The neighborhood was full of children. All Jonas had to do was walk outside to see his friends on bicycles or skates going up and down the sidewalks on the streets. They would play outside all day, and sometimes they would even forget to eat lunch. At night, they knew it was time to go home when the street lights came on or when their moms turned the porch light on. It was great being a kid in Lincolnton, in North Carolina in 1958. If Jonas needed anything, he could go to the closest house to one of his friends and get it. Food, drinks, or restrooms were always close by and willingly available at homes. There was just one rule: leave it as clean as it was when you got there. And they did, because if they didn't, their friends' moms would remind them. That day, Jonas and his friends decided to play cowboys and Indians. Nowadays, parents don't want you to play cowboys and Indians because you pretend that you have bows and arrows and guns and shoot people. The boys knew they were just playing and acting like the stars in the movies and television shows. Roy Rogers, the Lone Ranger, Gene Autry were the boys' favorites. The stories always ended with the good guys winning, singing a happy song, and riding off into the sunset. They were their heroes, and the boys wanted to dress like them and pretend they were them. They were brave, good people who cared about their friends and families. Jonas thought his father was just like Roy Rogers. The girls in the neighborhood didn't like playing with the boys. They preferred to do their own thing, and Jonas had no interest in doing what they were doing. Occasionally, he would see the girls skating on their metal skates with the skate key on a string around their necks. Or they would be playing jacks, jumping ropes, or playing with hula hoops. Sometimes Jonas would run through the ropes while the girls were chanting, "Cinderella, dressed in yellow, went upstairs to kiss her fellow." Cinderella was always in her yellow dress. The girls would fuss and yell at Jonas, and he would laugh and then go on about his business playing with the guys. Jonas's best friend was Dale. He lived across the street from Jonas. Although he and Dale were different from each other in many ways, they enjoyed and explored the neighborhood together, and they always managed to find an adventure to keep them occupied. The boys played for a while and then decided to walk down to the Child's Wolf drugstore for something to drink. The drugstore in their neighborhood had a great soda fountain. 10 cents would buy a tall Coca-Cola or an A&W root beer in a frosty mug. It was quite a treat on a hot summer day. As they sat in the wooden booth drinking their Cokes, they talked about all kinds of things. Jonas looked over his shoulder to see if anyone could hear him. When he saw no one was nearby, he asked Dale if he had ever been in a parade. Me? Asked Dale. Golly, no. Don't you have to be someone special to be in a parade? Why would I be in a parade? Oh, I don't know. I just thought you might have been in one. I dreamed last night that I was in a parade. Well, next month we will have our 4th of July parade downtown. They're going to have a kids' parade. Maybe you can be in that one, said Dale. Oh, I doubt it. I'd rather just sit on the sidelines and wave at the people marching in the parade, said Jonas. It was just a dream. Jonas tried to visualize himself in a parade, and he thought it might be fun. But even if he could not march in the parade, he wanted to be on the sidelines, marching and watching and cheering as the soldiers carrying the American flag marched proudly down the street. Now that he knew his grandfather had fought in the war and given his life for his country, Jonas felt a pride he had not felt before. This year's parade would be more special than it had been in the past. Jonas and Dale slid out of the booth, ready to go on to their next adventure of the day. The boys walked on the sidewalk toward home. Jonas decided to tell Dale about the flag his mother had shown him about his grandfather. Dale's eyes lit up as Jonas told the story about his grandfather. Wow, said Dale. That's a great story. Your grandfather was a hero. Yeah, thought Jonas. My grandfather was a hero. Jonas began to think more about the war and wondered if any of his friends had family members who had been in the war. After dinner with his family, Jonas went to the bookshelf and found the World Book Encyclopedia that his mother had purchased earlier in the year. His mother knew that education was important, and she wanted to make sure Jonas had a good set of encyclopedias available to him whenever a question popped into his head or when he had homework to do. Jonas wanted to learn more about the American flag. He found the volume he needed and lay down on the floor under the floor lamp to read. He flipped through the pages and found the information on the American flag. Jonas read the following aloud in a low whisper. The stars and stripes of the American flag originated as a result of a resolution adopted by the Marine Committee of the Second Continental Congress at Philadelphia on June 14, 1777. The resolution read, resolved that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be the 13 stars, white in a blue field representing a new constellation. So let's look at this. So it was a flag. The stripes are red and white. Each stripe represents one of the original 13 colonies. Then you have the field of blue. At that time, there were not this many stars, but there were stars, and they said to put them in the field here, and that would represent a new constellation. Now, you know what a constellation is, the patterns of the stars in the sky. So this was to form a new constellation. All right. Jonas read that the colors on the flag did not have special meanings when the flag was created in 1777, but the colors of the Great Seal of the United States did. The Great Seal has an American flag on it. A man by the name of Charles Thompson said the white stripes represent purity and innocence. The red represents hardiness and valor. The blue represents the color of the chief, and in this case, the chief has a capital C. The broad band above the stripes represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Jonas also learned that there are proper ways to fly and salute the flag. He even learned that when flags become old and torn, there are special ways to treat them. At a flag burning ceremony, old, torn flags are properly cut and burned. The flag is treated with love and respect from the time it is made until it can no longer be flown with the proper dignity and respect that it deserves. Flags are used to drape the coffins of those men and women who served in the military. And when someone important dies, the flag is flown at half staff. That means that the flag is raised to the top of the flagpole and then lowered to the middle of the pole. The flag is flown at half staff at a designated number of days, and that is done out of respect. It should also be properly folded when removed from places of honor or taken down from the flagpoles. And you remember we learned in part 1 how to fold the American flag. Jonas thought of all the American flags in places all over town, like the post office, the library, the banks, the office buildings. When he started 4th grade in September, he would see the American flag flying in front of the school building. And every morning he would say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag in his classroom. Jonas had learned a lot about the American flag. He put the volume of the encyclopedia back on the shelf, spun around like a soldier, and marched around the house singing a song written by George M. Cohan. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. Chapter 3, we're going to read chapter 3, one more chapter, and then we're going to stop. All right, it's really going to get interesting, so I hope you're paying attention. This one is called The Creek and the Small Wooden Box. The next day, Jonas and Dale decided to walk down the street to do some exploring in the park that had a small creek running through it. The creek seldom had enough water to play in or to fish in, but recent rains had helped to fill it up enough to play in. The creek was fed by a couple of natural springs which helped to keep some water flowing all the time. Sometimes the boys would find interesting rocks or bugs or something entirely unexpected. Jonas and Dale looked out for lizards. Jonas hoped to capture one and put it in a mason jar he had brought along with him. Jonas ran ahead of Dale, hoping to be the first one to spot a lizard and to begin the chase. Dale never did like lizards or any other creepy, crawly creatures, but he didn't want to tell Jonas. He thought lizards were creepy, and it scared him when they took off running. He was afraid they would run over to him and up his leg, but they never did. But Dale could only imagine the horror of it. Dale ran to catch up with Jonas. The creek had more water than they had seen in a long time. Rather than look for lizards, the boys decided to build a boat out of some sticks and tall grass that had grown along the banks of the creek. They tried several different ways to make it work and finally found a way to keep 2 sticks together with string that they had found on the ground. Each of the boys made a boat. They placed them in the water, moving water, to test them. "Hey, Dale," Jonas shouted. Jonas loved teasing Dale. He reached into his pocket, threw a rubber snake at Dale's feet. Dale screamed. "You scream like a girl," Jonas laughed. Jonas didn't think it was funny. "I don't either," Dale yelled back. Dale knew that his scream did sound like a girl's scream, but he couldn't help it. He didn't like snakes or lizards. The boats quickly sailed down the creek, bumping off rocks as they went. "Hey, Dale," Jonas yelled. "Look." Dale didn't really want to look. He thought Jonas had seen a lizard or had another trick to play on him. On the other side of the creek bank, Jonas had spied an old box. Dale saw it too. The boys snatched up their boats and splashed over to it. They stood over it for a few seconds and each one tried to guess what was in it. Maybe it's a pirate's treasure, or maybe it's from a long time ago, or maybe it's from a bank robber like Jesse James, and it's full of money, Dale imagined. "Yeehaw, wouldn't that be great?" exclaimed Jonas. "Let's open it." "Be careful, you never know what might be in it, or under it," said Dale, hoping something creepy wouldn't crawl out from under it when Jonas picked it up. The box was definitely old and had been in that spot for a long time. It was halfway buried under dirt and weeds. Dale was surprised Jonas had seen it at all. He took a step back as Jonas used his hands to dig it out of the dirt. Jonas pulled it out and showed Dale. They both stood and looked at it, turning it over and looking at the bottom of it. They sat down on a large rock with the box between them. It was so old that the lid was stuck to it. They weren't quite sure how to open it. Jonas found a stone on the ground that had a sharp edge, and he used that stone to run around the rim of the lid that seemed to help break the dirt away. Jonas placed his fingers on the lid and began pulling. Dale stood by watching every move that Jonas made. He hoped to be the first to catch a glimpse as to what was inside the box. Jonas pulled again and again, then with one final pull, the lid came off. Jonas and Dale stood with the box between them, looked in amazement at its contents. Inside the box, covered with an old velvet cloth, this old velvet cloth was a piece of paper that had yellowed with age and a photograph of a man and woman and several small children. The boys sat back down on the rock to look. Dale reached for the photograph. The photograph was faded and had Sifford written on the back. So it had Sifford, and here was the old faded photograph. He did not know of anyone named Sifford and was not even sure it was a family name, but it could have been. He put the photo back into the box. Dale held onto the box while Jonas picked up the piece of paper that had been folded in half. Very slowly, Jonas unfolded the paper. "What is it?" asked Dale. "Looks like some sort of a drawing. What do you think?" What do you think? "Hold it over here in the sunlight. It has faded so badly it's hard to see what's on it," said Dale as he squinted to look at it. "I think we need to take it away from the creek and find a sunny area so we can see it better." The boys carefully placed the paper and the velvet cloth back into the box with the photo and put the lid back on it. They retraced their steps and walked far enough away from the creek that the darkness from the trees ended and the sunlight began. Jonas and Dale sat down in a grassy area and opened the box again. "It looks like a map, Dale. Do you see those marks? A couple of squiggly lines and circles, and there's an X right there," said Jonas as he pointed at the paper. "What do you think it means?" Dale said. He hoped Jonas would have a good answer for him, but he didn't. Jonas looked as confused as Dale. "So what do we do now?" Well, that is the end of our reading for today. So you will have to join in with me for the next part, which will be part 3, and we will see if we can start trying to solve this mystery that has come about as a result of this adventure. I don't know if you've ever had adventures where you got out and you ran around and maybe you explored and you found some things that you weren't quite sure about. I know I have. Been out many a time looking at different things, just enjoying nature and playing and having a good time, and find something and I wonder, where in the world did this come from? Well, I think Jonas and Dale are getting ready to find out just a little bit more about the history of Lincolnton and of Lincoln County, North Carolina. thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will come back when we do part 3. Thank you. Have a great day.